What if the one person Reacher trusted the most turns out to be the one hiding the biggest secret? That is the question fans cannot stop asking after the first few episodes of Reacher Season 4. Something feels off, and Episode 5 might be the moment everything cracks open.
Stick around, because we are breaking down what could happen next piece by piece. Before we get into what might happen in Episode 5, let us take a moment to remember where things stand right now. Reacher has spent the first part of this season pulled into a mess that looks small on the surface, but keeps getting bigger the more he digs. A simple favor or a random encounter turned into something much darker, and by the end of the last episode, the people around him started acting strange. Someone who seemed friendly is now avoiding him. Someone who seemed dangerous might actually be trying to warn him. That kind of mixed signal is classic Reacher storytelling, and it is exactly why fans keep watching. The tension has been building slowly. Reacher is not someone who panics, but even he has started to notice that pieces of this puzzle do not add up. There have been small hints dropped in earlier scenes, a name mentioned only once, a look between two characters that lasted a second too long, a location that keeps coming up even though nobody explains why.
These little details usually mean something big is coming. Shows like this do not waste screen time on random details. If the camera lingers on something, it usually matters later. We also cannot ignore the emotional side of the story.
Reacher has been more guarded than usual, and that alone tells us something personal is at stake this season, not just another case to solve. He has clearly been affected by something from his past, and it feels like this episode is where that past finally catches up to him.
The people closest to him are starting to ask questions he does not want to answer.
And that kind of pressure is exactly what leads to big reveals. Be why the time this episode starts.
The pressure has reached a point where something has to give. Someone is going to make a move, whether it is Reacher himself or someone trying to get ahead of him.
The stage is set for a turning point, and that is exactly what we are about to break down in the next part. Now let us get into the part everyone is waiting for. What Episode 5 could actually show us. Based on how this season has been building, this episode feels like the one where Reacher stops reacting to things and starts taking control.
Up until now, he has been following clues, listening to people, and staying quiet while he figures out who he can trust. That usually does not last long in a Reacher story. There is always a moment where he decides enough is enough.
And everything points to this episode being that moment. One thing that seems likely is a face-to-face confrontation between Reacher and someone who has been dancing around the truth. This is not a random guess. The show has been setting up a character who clearly knows more than they are letting on. Every time this person speaks, they choose their words a little too carefully, like they are protecting something.
Reacher is smart enough to notice that pattern, and he is not the type to let it slide for long.
Expect a scene where he corners this person, not with violence at first, but with pressure. He asks the kind of question that forces someone to either lie badly or finally tell the truth. There is also a strong chance this episode moves the location of the story somewhere new.
A lot of season-long mysteries like this one use the middle episodes to widen the world a little,
showing us a place we have not seen yet, maybe a building, a warehouse, or a town that has been mentioned but never shown. This gives the story room to breathe and gives Reacher a new environment to work through, which usually means a new set of problems and a new group of people to figure out. Action is another big piece here. Reacher shows tend to space out their bigger physical moments, using quieter episodes to build tension before letting it explode. Episode 5 lands right in that sweet spot where a slow burn usually turns into a release.
That could mean a fight that feels earned rather than random. Something that happens because the story pushed things to a breaking point.
Not just for shock value. Underneath all of this, the emotional thread keeps tightening. Reacher is being forced to face something personal, and this episode likely peels back another layer of that.
We might learn a detail about his past that reframes why he reacted the way he did earlier in the season. That kind of reveal does not feel like filler. It feels like the show finally answering a question it has been quietly asking since episode 1. This is where things get interesting, because every good episode needs a turn nobody sees coming, and episode 5 feels like the spot where that turn happens.
All season long, the story has been leading us to believe one thing, that the danger is coming from outside, from strangers, from people Reacher has never met before.
But what if the real threat has been standing close to him the whole time?
That kind of twist fits perfectly with how this season has been paced, quiet, careful,
and full of small clues that only make sense once you look back. Picture this. The person Reacher confronted in the last section does not just give him a partial truth.
They reveal something that flips the entire investigation upside down. Maybe the case Reacher thought he was solving was never really about the crime itself. It was a setup designed to pull him into something much bigger. That would explain why so many characters have been acting strange, why information has been hard to get, and why every lead seems to circle back to the same unanswered question. A twist like this does not just shock the audience. It forces Reacher to rethink everything he has done since episode 1. There is also a strong chance this episode introduces a betrayal. Someone Reacher trusted turns out to be working against him, even if only in a small way at first. This kind of moment hits harder than a stranger turning evil, because it changes how we view every earlier scene involving that character.
Suddenly, those quiet conversations and small favors do not look so innocent anymore.
Shows like this love planting trust early so they can break it later. And this feels like the episode built for exactly that. Another possibility is a reveal tied directly to Reacher's past. Something personal that connects him to the very people he is investigating. Instead of this being just another job, it becomes something closer to unfinished business. A thread from his history finally being pulled all the way through. That kind of reveal raises the stakes instantly.
Because now, it is not just about solving a case. It is about Reacher protecting something or someone he actually cares about, whatever form the twist takes.
It likely leaves Reacher with fewer allies and a clearer target. The comfortable version of the story ends here, and what comes next is going to feel more personal, more dangerous,
and much harder to walk away from. So where does all of this leave us heading into the rest of the season?
If episode 5 really does deliver the kind of twist we just talked about, then the show has quietly shifted from a simple case of the week into something much bigger and more personal for Reacher. That change matters, because it tells us the writers are not just filling time, they are building toward a finale that ties directly back to this moment. Nothing about this reveal feels like a side story. It feels like the real engine driving the second half of the season for Reacher himself.
This episode likely marks a turning point in how he approaches everything from here on out. Trust is going to be harder for him to give, and that means we should expect him to work more alone, relying less on the people around him and more on his own instincts.
That shift usually leads to bigger risks, since Reacher without backup tends to push harder and take chances he normally would not. It also raises the stakes for anyone still close to him, because now their loyalty is in question too. The betrayal or hidden connection we talked about earlier is not going to stay buried for long.
Expect the next few episodes to slowly reveal how deep it actually goes, pulling in more characters, and showing us that this was never a small problem to begin with. Shows like this love layering their mysteries, so what looks like one secret today often turns into 3 or 4 more once the door is opened.
That means episode 5 is not the end of the surprises. It is really just the beginning. There is also the emotional side to consider. Once Reacher's past gets pulled into the main story, it changes how we watch him move forward. Every decision he makes from here carries extra weight, because it is no longer just about finishing a job. It is about closing a chapter from his own life.
That kind of personal stake tends to make the final episodes hit much harder.
Since the audience is not just watching a mystery unfold.
They are watching someone deal with unfinished pain. So heading into episode 6 and beyond.
Expect fewer easy answers, and a lot more pressure on Reacher to figure out who he can actually rely on.
The pieces are falling into place, and once the twist lands, there is no going back to the simple version of the story we started with. This season is clearly building towards something big, and episode 5 looks like the moment it finally shows its hand.